this is just one part of the ethnic attire of the indigenous tribe of which I am the descendant of. Anyway, check this out. See, that is a TikTok video with over 5.8 million views at the time of this recording. And it kind of demonstrates perfectly the point that I want to talk about, the topic that my patrons on Patreon voted for, and in fact voted for overwhelmingly, which is victimhood mentality, and how it is used by some non-vegans to justify their consumption of the tortured corpses of innocent beings. Now, first of all, what is victimhood mentality? So victimhood mentality is this perpetual viewing of oneself as the victim. And this is not to say that there is not actual victimization going on in the world. Trust me, I know. The problem arises when you view yourself as the victim in a scenario where you're simply not the victim. And this can have devastating consequences in itself, right? In your own life, right? And psychologists and psychiatrists have studied this to some extent. But today I want to talk about one very specific implication of victimhood mentality. It is when victimhood mentality is used to justify causing unnecessary suffering onto others, onto other innocent individuals. And then when it is pointed out, right, look, you're causing unnecessary suffering, the person, the oppressor, the person causing the suffering, acts as if they are the victim in that scenario. Now I'm going to use that TikTok video as an example. Well, this is of course not specific to this person, nor is it specific to the ethnic group that this person belongs to. I'm just using this as an example because, well, this is a viral video, which means that a lot of people agree with it. In fact, at the time of this recording, the video has 5.8 million views and over 1 million likes. So over 1 million people agree with this sentiment, right? So that's why I'm using this as an example, because many people agree with it. You see, according to the Instagram bio and the TikTok bio of this person is Inuk. Now I encourage you to look into the history of these atrocities that were committed against the indigenous people of the Americas, which caused tremendous amount of suffering, right? And very real suffering. Anyway, I want you to ask yourself a general question, not specific to animal rights and veganism, but just in general. Does the very real nature and the tremendous amount of the suffering that was caused justify this person causing suffering onto others, causing unnecessary suffering onto others? Just in general. For example, is it justifiable for her to punch someone unnecessarily when that person is not causing any suffering onto her? She's not doing it for self-defense. She's just punching that person randomly. Is that justified? And if she does punch someone and someone else comes in and says, hey, what are you doing? That's very wrong. Don't just punch someone randomly. And her response is something like, well, I'm indigenous. Don't force your imperialist morality on me. In that scenario, in that hypothetical scenario, this person, the TikToker, is playing the victim when she isn't one, right? She's pretending to be the victim even though the person whom she punched is the victim in that scenario, right? She is exhibiting victimhood mentality. Let me give you one more example. Let me tell you about this. You see, India is not a homogeneous country. Even though in the Western world, I know that people have a tendency to group everyone who isn't white into one category, or at least group people together by the general region of the globe that they come from. You know, for example, saying Asian, Black, Indigenous, White, and so on. That does not accurately describe the actual history of these peoples. So for example, in India, there are these various indigenous tribes which are sort of marginalized within India, okay? And that is just one of the ways that you could be marginalized within India. I suppose another way that you could be marginalized in India is if you're Northeast Indian, right? Which I also happen to be. And to some extent, there is discrimination against these groups, right? And if you have belong to more than one of these marginalized groups, then of course you face more than one kind of discrimination. Now, for example, if you, the person who is watching, if you're, let's say, a Westerner, right? And you see sort of like mainland Indians, like people who are northeastern, right? You see them discriminating against Northeast Indians, right? You see mainland Indians discriminating against Northeast Indians, and you say, well, that's wrong. Like you tell the mainland Indian, that's wrong. What are you doing? And that person just goes, well, you're a Westerner, you're this privileged person. How dare you come here and tell me how I should and should not behave? That is colonialist, that is imperialist. That Indian is playing the victim when they simply aren't the victim. Or let me give you another example. Let's say someone in India who does not have any indigenous tribal ancestry, right? They're discriminating against someone who does have like indigenous tribal ancestry, and you like say that very similar thing, right? Like, that's wrong, you shouldn't be doing it. And the response is again, well, you're a Westerner, how dare you tell me how to behave? That is, you're just continuing the legacy of colonialism, of Western colonialism. How dare you? You should check your privilege. If that's the response, then that Indian, right, that non-tribal sort of Indian, is playing the victim when they simply aren't one. By the way, if you're finding this video to be insightful, a sub to the channel would be super. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. And maybe you're thinking, but Aditya, wait, you're missing the point. This person is doing it for survival. She has to eat animal products for survival. She does not have access to nutritious plant-based food, so she is forced to consume the flesh of non-human animals. Well, then what does her ethnicity have anything to do with it? If it is about survival, it does not matter at all what the ethnicity of the person is. It does not matter if they are like indigenous North American, if they're like a white settler, if they're like a black person, if they're East Asian, if they're South Asian. It does not matter. It does not matter at all. If you don't have access to plant-based food, say that. Mentioning your ethnicity in this scenario is simply useless. So no, it's not about that. It is very much about playing the victim when she isn't one. The victim in this scenario are the non-human animals. Similar to how the victim in the scenario where the mainland Indian was discriminating against Northeast Indians, the victims were the Northeast Indians, not the mainland Indian being told not to discriminate. And in this scenario, the victims are the non-human animals, not the human being who is being told not to discriminate, not to oppress, not to torture and kill the non-human animals. In this very particular example, however, we can be very certain that it is not about survival. It is about playing the victim. And how do we know that? Because in a different TikTok video, not posted very like long before posting this one, she shows off like bracelets and earrings that are made out of the corpses of non-human animals. Have a look. Explain to me what part of that is necessary for survival. What part of wearing a part of the corpse of non-human animals on your wrists, on your ears, is necessary for survival? Tell me how any of that is necessary for survival. So no, she does not do this for survival. And by the way, in that very same video, she says this very cliche thing that even people from my own ethnicity sort of say, right? Even within the Indian context, they say things like, well, first let me show you the video. In our culture, animals provide for our people. You see, this is something that I even hear from people of my own ethnicity within India, right? So people belonging to like who have the same ancestry as me, right? Who have the same ancestral lineage, sort of. People who are the descendants of the same indigenous tribe, and indeed like people who are the descendants of other indigenous tribes. They would say these things, right? They would say that in our culture, animals provide for our people. And this is not unique to these indigenous tribes. People all across India say, oh, this is my culture. I do this because it is part of my culture, right? Whether they're indigenous tribal, whether they are not indigenous tribal, whatever category of Indian that they belong to, they say these things, right? And this is of course not specific to India, right? People from across the world, from every corner of the world say this, right? Whether they are like brown, black, white, purple, yellow, green, I don't care. Everyone says this. It is part of our culture. Anyway, so I do know that some cultures, when some cultures say this, it is taken more seriously. And I see this within India, happening within India itself. But I've seen the killing happening. I've seen it with my own two eyes, right? The animals don't provide. You see, contrary to the sugar-coated belief, animals don't give us their flesh, their milk, their eggs. No, we take them from them. The animals don't give us their babies. No, we steal their babies away from them. The animals try to run. They try to escape. They try to hide from the butcher. But of course they can't, right? They are trapped. They are locked up, right? And ultimately the butcher gets to them. They try to run and hide in the same way that you and I would try to run and hide if we were in their place. So stop it with this nonsense that animals provide for your people. The animals don't care about the skin color of their oppressors. Just as you wouldn't. Just as I wouldn't. Stop perpetually viewing yourself as the victim. You are not the victim in this scenario. The non-human animals are the victims. You see, right now, people are willing to listen to you. The culture is such that people are willing to listen to you even when you shout fire when there isn't one. But if you keep doing this, if you keep shouting fire when there isn't one, ultimately it's going to get to a point when there is an actual fire and you shout fire, no one's going to be willing to listen. So when there's an actual fire, that would be a real problem, wouldn't it? Anyway, that's been it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what I do, you can support me via Patreon. It's the first link down in the description box. You can follow me on social media here. YouTube thinks you like this video the best. This is my most recent video, so be sure to check those out. Leave a comment letting me know what your thoughts are about this video. I'll be in the comment section for a while after publishing this video, and we can have some discussions there. So I'll see you there.